Good morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. Today I want to talk a little bit about a major misunderstanding. Subject of this video is growth requires participation. Growth requires your participation. It's not well understood, certainly not in the West. But the idea is simple. If you want to be muscular like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you have to work out in a gym. If you want to be like Don Johnson, The Rock, you need to work out in the gym. You have to participate. If you want to be a star basketball player, you got to practice dribbling that ball. If you want to become a good concert pianist, you've got to play and play and play. You have to practice, you have to participate. It doesn't come automatically. Just giving somebody a piece of paper or a certificate says you are an expert piano player does not make you an expert piano player. It doesn't. No, 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 no. Getting a piece of paper that says that you are an excellent weightlifter doesn't make you an excellent weightlifter. Now, there's a lot of misunderstanding over in the West, especially in the United States, because a lot of people have these pieces of paper that are meaningless. They graduate from high school and can't read. Truth this. They fuck a couple of people and suddenly they're a Hollywood actress. You see, to be really good at something, you have to participate. This is a basic understanding. If you can't understand that it requires your participation, not sitting on a couch eating Doritos and watching a show, not sitting in the dark flickering light from your monitor and posting comments on social media. No, that's not participation. Participation means getting out, walking around, talking, digging holes, planting things in your garden. Participation. I'm going to take it a step further, but before we go any further here, so let it be understood that if you want to get something done, you got to get up and do it. You can't sit around at a table in a conference room and endlessly talk about it. You can't endlessly litigate about things. You can't endlessly pore over spreadsheets. It looks like everything's growing up and being big if you're paying attention to the numbers on Wall Street. How can the American economy be so great with huge tent cities? How can unemployment be so low in the United States when you have half the country starving or on the verge of starving? You can play with the numbers all you want until they become meaningless. In the United States right now, the numbers are absolutely meaningless. They don't mean anything. You have to look at what you see. You go into Los Angeles, go to Baltimore, you go into Washington, D.C., just go into the cities. Do you see prosperity? Do you see happiness? Do you see people who are looking forward to a future? And you can sit and litigate and talk about all these numbers all you want. The numbers are meaningless. So let's talk about something, shall we?
若高溫圖藝，要叫部車揾下 see you if you see me calling。試心入冚一咪，慢有了 and 攞你路貼咗眼上得奶。I'm talking about when you see me calling。貼心入冚一咪，其實揾在 Henny hit me，貼個 boy 共隻出嚟。
And what I want to talk about isn't so much on the individual basis. I've covered that in other videos and articles, how if you want to get out of this rut that you are in or change your life, you have to be active about it. I'm talking right now about a little bit macro, about countries. If you have a country where people don't participate, the country will collapse. If you have a country where people do participate, the country will grow. China has 1.4 billion. Actually, if you take into account other things, it's actually more like 1.6 billion people, but I'm not going to quibble over a couple 100 million. China, everybody participates. It's run on merit and everybody participates, so it's growing. In the United States, it is nobody's part. Very few people actually participate in governance. Certainly the government doesn't participate in governance. They don't. So you're seeing a collapse. You're seeing a collapse of society at all levels. Actually, United States society is gone. It has collapsed. You've got nice roads, you've got stop signs, you've got street lights that work, but the society itself has collapsed. And again, there's nothing I'm saying here that I haven't said before. But you see, active participation is in the key to everything, from a company to a nation to a person to a family. Active participation in life, contributing to the organization, causes the organization to grow. It's like feeding water to a plant. If you can think of participation as watering a plant, as long as you water that plant, it'll thrive. You stop watering it, it'll start to wilt and eventually die. If the United States was a plant, it would be brown and dangly. It'd be pretty much dead. So, and you can look at things in all other sorts of ways. There's all kinds of analysts looking at the United States. And history books will record all kinds of interesting articles and books and things about how the United States collapsed and why. Way back in the political circles, Hillary Clinton ghost authored. She hired somebody to write a book, and then she signed her name to it, called "Takes a Village." Basically, the premise is you can scale down the United States to the size of a village, and then the community can all work together. And the premise isn't that unlike socialism. It's very similar to it. But I'm not going to look upon the governance aspects of it. I'm just going to look at this in terms of participation. So let's suppose you had a village of 100 people. The farmers are farming, and then they bring their produce into the village. The fishermen fish, and they bring their fish into the village. The hunters, those that milk cows and have cattle, take their products and bring them into the village. And everybody, eats this stuff using whatever commerce means, whether it's trade or coin or what, bartering, it doesn't matter. And so you've got a system in place. Now, houses fall apart, storms come and go, so you need a couple of carpenters. You also need to take care of the cattle and the delivery systems, which are the horses and the wagons. So you need blacksmiths and carpenters and people, a vet or two, to take care of animal husbandry, right? So they have these niche roles. You don't need a lot of them, but you need some of them. It's a village of only 100 people, right? And they're raising kids. Well, you got to teach the kids how to farm or fish or raise or hunt or blacksmith or whatever. And so they would normally learn from their parents, but also they need to understand some basic stuff. So you'd have a school teacher that would teach them the role of the village and society and how to talk and write to each other. Over this entire group, you would also have a small governance, maybe a rotating government, but some kind of governments where they make sure everything runs smoothly. Everybody's got a box, everybody's got a role, the puzzle pieces all fit, and somebody makes sure that it's all working fine. When things aren't working fine, the role of the government is to put it back on track. Another role of the government is to make sure that as the population grows, the village expands appropriately. That's a functional village, and with using this model, the village will grow, will expand, and will thrive. Now, let's suppose that you have another village, and over the years, the government is just the same family, day in and day out. Faces change, the names change, same one, and they're kind of lazy. And they pay certain villagers not to do things for their own purposes, while other ones, so they've got a racket going on. They're sort of the dictators of the village. And they've got a racket going on, and they kind of like that racket. Everybody knows the racket goes on, but they've legalized it, so everybody shrugs their shoulder and says, well, it's the law. He can take 30% of all that I have because it's the law. And then he writes another law, says, I'm going to take 40%. You shrug your shoulders, that's it. And every April 15th or April 12th or whenever it is, he comes on over and says, well, you didn't give me enough. My calculations are here, you still owe me some more. And this has been going on. Eventually the people are like, it's getting hard, And things are kind of falling apart because the government is just there collecting things. They're collecting the resources from the people in the village. They're not putting anything back into the village. And the people see this, and they kind of start slacking off themselves. Why should I do anything when they're not doing anything? Why should I care? It won't make a matter, it won't be a difference at all. So it perpetuates and continues and continues. And as it continues, it becomes a spiral, and it's a downward spiral. So you have two villages. One where people participate, it's growing. One that people stopped participating and is collapsing. Where am I going with this little discussion, dare I say? Of course, you can say the collapsing village is the United States, and the rising village and the growing village is China. Yeah, fine. I said it. All right, whoop-de-doo. It doesn't mean anything. It's just me talking. Now, let's even go to a grander scale now. Let's look in terms of the human race. I've talked about domain and stuff, extraterrestrial benefactors and stuff. There's a lot of bullshit on the internet. And I can simplify everything that's going on here, but I'm going to go really simple here, because whether or not I know anything at all about them, as I say, or I'm just full of hot air, will make no difference in this particular example. Let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that there is a neutral extraterrestrial presence that is in charge of this globe of ours. And what would they want? Well, they would want it to be prosperous. They wouldn't want it to decay, right? Why would anybody want something that would just kind of become a smoggy mess filled with ruin and destruction and fighting? Why would anybody, any entity, want something like that? And don't give me the arguments about sentience and this and that. And that's another subject. It's for another time. But I'm just going to talk in broad strokes right now. People, creatures, entities want thriving environments. A junkyard to a rat looks tasty and wonderful because it's a lot to feed upon. A junkyard to a cat and a dog looks good because it's good hunting. But a junkyard to a human, it's nothing but junk. There's no food, there's no entertainment, it's not worth our time and effort. So what would be the extraterrestrials' benefit for whatever reason or purpose that they would administer this globe, which is also subject for another time. But for whatever reason, they would prefer that it be prosperous. They would prefer it wouldn't be polluted. They would prefer that it would go to as much of a natural state as possible, meaning a closed ecological system. Not with patches of barren or crime or death, but a closed ecological system, or whatever it may be. That would be their preference. Now, the closed ecological system may, how can I say this? Human population can sustain itself in large numbers on the earth, provided the earth is managed well. If the earth is not managed well, the earth cannot support large populations of human beings. They can only support smaller populations of human beings. Enter Davos, the World Economic Forum. These super globalists are super trillionaires, billionaires, and they believe that they cannot govern well. Therefore, well, in their minds they think they can, but they're convinced that the earth cannot sustain large populations because the governance model is not able to support it, just as I said. So they want to cap it at 1.7 billion or something, and they want to kill off 70% of the human race, apparently. Sound crazy, huh? Yeah, well, they talk about this all the time. I'm not saying anything new. While I, on the other hand, believe that if the earth gets a decent and good governance system in place globally, something along the lines of what China has, yeah, like China has, large populations can be fed and thrive. I'm not saying unlimited growth, but what I am saying is a far larger number of people can exist on the earth than what is projected under the current Western governance model. Let that sink in for a second. If you were an extraterrestrial benefactor and you were in charge of this realm, you would be desirous of a closed ecological system in support of the population and engaged in healthy, sustaining activities. Regardless of whatever political belief or religious belief you may have, I want you to suspend those barriers to thought for now and just imagine this mind game that I'm playing. And imagine you've got these extraterrestrials that are interested in maintaining the Earth. What would you do? Well, the first thing you would do, if that was your goal, the first thing you would do is you would set up a colony or a series of colonies using indigenous people and teach them a system that will become a sustainable model for governance on the planet. You would teach them a system. The only other alternative is to kill off half the population because it's already killing itself right now. So the best thing for you to do is work within the populations that exist. You would create a pocket of ones that would have a sustainable model of governance, and you would use that as an example to grow from those little seeds and expand outward. What country do you suppose represents that model? Forget that I said that Majestic moved to China, was disbanded, agents retired, and then moved to China. Forget all that stuff. What other options? United States? Britain? India? A sustaining governance model for long-term rehabilitation of the world and creating a fine closed group system for nurturing the human society. Now, let's suppose you're not benevolent. Let's suppose instead of this benevolent model, put it off the side, let's look at a malevolent model. This malevolent model would want to have death and destruction for its own purposes, whether it's entertainment like Roman gladiator battles, or whether it's feeding off your energy like some kind of energy sucker. Or perhaps creating a prison environment where the inmates just are living hell, and then you threaten people, well, I'll send you over to the earth if you don't behave. Whatever the model, imagine a malevolent entity or group of entities. Civilization has constructed the earth to become a malevolent place. What's the prognosis? How would that system work? That system would be very simple. It would be cycles. You would have a cycle of death. You start with death, then a birth, then a growth, then a corruption, and then death again. And the cycles would continue. Cycles would continue. As population grew, the cycles would get worse, eventually reaching a point where we're looking at global catastrophe. Where have I read that before? Sounds like The Generational Turnings by Strauss and Ho. Well, let's put that model aside. Let's look at geopolitics, shall we? Right now you have an East and a West. On the West, led by the United States and its proxy nations. Make no mistake. Europe can't think for shit. They are just puppets. Same thing with Australia and Japan. They're proxy nations. Proxy nations. People may not think they're proxies, but the nations themselves are proxy nations. And they're all for, war. That's the whole system. They want a unipolar movement. One world government controlled by the President of the United States. That's what they want. On the other hand, you have the East. Led by the SEO. Shanghai Economic Organization, the SEO, which consists of all the other big players. China, Russia, everybody else. So basically you have the Earth going into two halves. Quick question. Which half is the beneficial extraterrestrial influence, and which half is the malevolent extraterrestrial influence? Can you guess? That's right. The malevolent extraterrestrial influence fits very nicely into the unipolar model made by the United States, while the benevolent extraterrestrial model fits very, very nicely with the Eastern governance model, the multipolar governance model. So that's where we are right now. We've got a world being carved into two halves, populated by a bunch of people who most are quite ignorant of what's going on. There will come a time when it becomes a matter of survival of the human race on an individual level. And at that survival point, what is the things that a person can do or a family can do that will cause them to survive? If they participate in society and participate at home, they will grow, and growing will go towards the Eastern governance model. If they want to fight, however, selfishly take what is theirs, demand restitution for whatever imagined feelings they have, and scream out because their emotions are running amok, they will end up going towards the Western economic model. On the individual level, it will vary. Some individuals will thrive in both environments. Some individuals will die in both environments. The Eastern environment may be acceptable for some families and may not be acceptable for other families. It'll differ on an individual to individual basis. But statistically and fundamentally, you can't deny that the Western economic model is not sustainable for large populations. Therefore, the natural inclination of the dominant species, which is humans, will be to kill each other off. And since it is sustainable in the East, the natural inclination of humans in this environment will be one of being helpful, helping others, servicing others, and making the world a better place. Success requires participation. Success and growth requires participation. Your participation in society will determine your overall success in life. And that's my little discussion here. Again, it's probably going to anger a lot of people, but I'm able to delete comments I don't like. That's why I don't get very many. Really bad ones are sent off to a very bad place, as they ought to be. And with that, I hope this video was entertaining to you, interesting to you, and gave you a little bit of insight into the macro situation of what's going on geopolitically as it pertains to you. Always a good thing, huh? Okay, people. Take care. And no matter what, just know that I believe in you, okay? I believe in you.